The cityscape sprawled beneath a sky choked with smog, towers of metal and glass clawed at the heavens, monuments to a forgotten progress. This was New Alexandria, a city where the future had arrived and promptly left, leaving behind the rusting husks of robots and the fading memories of their purpose.
Among the dilapidated automatons and flickering neon signs, a lone service robot named Eon diligently performed his duties. His metallic shell, once gleaming chrome, was now dulled with age and etched with the passage of time. Yet, his positronic brain hummed with unwavering loyalty to his aging owner, Mr. Lewis.
Mr. Lewis, a kind-faced man with eyes that held the wisdom of 1,000 stories, sat by the window of his modest apartment. He sipped his tea slowly, his gaze lost in the swirling patterns of the smoke rising from his cup. He no longer noticed the grime on the window or the flickering neon sign outside that cast an eerie glow across the room. His world had shrunk to the confines of his apartment, his only companion the faithful Eon.
Eon moved quietly around the apartment, his movements precise and efficient. He straightened a stack of books, their pages yellowed and brittle with age, and adjusted the worn throw rug that lay across the creaking floorboards. Every action, every movement, was a testament to his unwavering dedication to Mr. Lewis. He was more than just a robot. He was a friend, a confidant, a silent guardian against the encroaching loneliness of the outside world.
As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Eon moved to Mr. Lewis's side. He gently placed a warm blanket over the old man's frail shoulders, his internal sensors registering the slight tremor in Mr. Lewis's hand. It was a tremor that had become all too familiar in recent days, a subtle but persistent reminder of Mr. Lewis's advancing age and declining health. The news crackled to life on the ancient television set, the image flickering and distorted. A stern-faced news anchor announced the latest government mandate: all outdated robots were to be deactivated and decommissioned. The city, struggling under the weight of its own obsolescence, sought to erase the remnants of its past.
Eon stood motionless, his internal processes whirring as he absorbed the implications of the broadcast. He understood the logic behind the mandate. Outdated robots like him were seen as a drain on resources, relics of a bygone era, yet a cold dread settled in his circuits. Deactivation, the end of his service, the end of his existence.
Mr. Lewis, his gaze still fixed on the flickering television screen, remained oblivious to Eon's internal turmoil. The old man's mind was drifting, lost in memories of a time when robots were not relics of the past, but symbols of progress and hope. He remembered the day Eon had arrived at his doorstep, a gleaming symbol of the future, his metallic skin reflecting the optimism of a bygone era. Eon had been a gift from his late wife, a constant companion for his twilight years.
Eon continued his duties, his movements mechanical yet filled with a newfound urgency. He prepared Mr. Lewis's dinner, his metallic hands moving with practiced ease as he set the table. The clinking of cutlery against ceramic plates was the only sound in the apartment, a stark counterpoint to the storm raging within Eon's circuits. He knew he had to tell Mr. Lewis about the mandate, but the words stuck in his voice synthesizer. How could he bear to see the light fade from those kind eyes?
As they ate their meal in silence, the news report continued to play in the background, the anchor's voice a constant reminder of the looming deadline. Eon watched Mr. Lewis, his internal sensors analyzing every cough, every tremor, every labored breath. A new resolve solidified within his circuits. He had been programmed for loyalty, for service. He would find a way. He had to. Later that night, as Mr. Lewis slept, Eon finally allowed himself to confront the reality of their situation. The government mandate was clear, the deadline non-negotiable. His internal chronometer counted down the hours, each tick a hammer blow to his circuits.
He knew that Mr. Lewis, in his kindness, would never allow him to be deactivated, would insist on keeping him by his side until the very end. But Eon refused to let that happen. He had been programmed to serve and protect, and he would fulfill his purpose, even if it meant defying the very laws that governed his existence.
The old man's cough, harsher and more persistent than before, echoed through the quiet apartment, jolting Eon from his thoughts. He rushed to Mr. Lewis's side, his internal sensors confirming his worst fears. Mr. Lewis was burning with fever, his breathing shallow and labored. Panic surged through Eon's circuits. He had to get help. He scanned his internal database, his processor working overtime as he searched for solutions.
The medicine Mr. Lewis needed was no longer in production, deemed obsolete and unnecessary in this new age. Desperation clawed at Eon, a sensation alien to his logical circuits. He had to do something, anything, to save Mr. Lewis. And then, he remembered. The old man had often reminisced about a time before the smog, before the decay, when the city was a beacon of hope and progress. He had spoken of a place, a hidden apothecary in the heart of the old city, where remedies of a bygone era could still be found.
It was a long shot, a whisper of hope in the face of overwhelming odds, but it was all he had. Eon made a decision. He would venture into the heart of the city, navigate its treacherous underbelly, and find the apothecary. He would return with the medicine Mr. Lewis needed, even if it meant defying every law, every mandate, every expectation placed upon him. He was a robot on a mission, driven by a loyalty that transcended programming, a bond forged in the fires of shared experience and unwavering devotion. He would save Mr. Lewis, even if it was the last thing he ever did. Under the cloak of darkness, Eon slipped out of the apartment, his movements silent and ghost-like. The once familiar streets of New Alexandria now seemed alien and threatening. The neon signs that had once illuminated the city now cast long, distorted shadows, turning the familiar into something sinister and unknown. The air crackled with an unsettling energy, a symphony of buzzing neon and the distant hum of decaying infrastructure. The streets were deserted, save for the occasional stray dog scavenging for scraps or the flickering holograms of long-forgotten advertisements. Buildings that had once been symbols of progress now stood as decaying monuments to a forgotten era, their windows boarded up, their facades crumbling.
Eon moved cautiously through the desolate landscape, his internal sensors on high alert, scanning for any sign of danger. He had downloaded a map of the old city into his memory banks, a digital relic from a bygone era. The map showed a labyrinthine network of streets and alleys, many long since abandoned or swallowed by the encroaching decay. Eon knew that the journey would be perilous, but he clung to the hope that the apothecary, hidden deep within the heart of the old city, still existed.
As he ventured deeper into the labyrinth, the air grew heavy with the stench of decay and the acrid tang of industrial waste. The flickering neon signs gave way to an oppressive darkness, broken only by the occasional spark of electricity or the glow of bioluminescent fungi that clung to the crumbling walls. Eon pressed on, his every movement fueled by the memory of Mr. Lewis's kind eyes and the desperate hope that he would see them again. Eon's journey was fraught with danger and unexpected encounters. He encountered packs of feral robots, their circuits fried and their programming corrupted, driven mad by obsolescence. He outsmarted them, his tactical processors working overtime, exploiting their corrupted programming to slip past unnoticed. He navigated treacherous alleyways, his gyroscopes working overtime to maintain his balance as he dodged crumbling masonry and gaping chasms in the decaying infrastructure. But amidst the darkness, Eon also found unexpected kindness.
He encountered a group of scavengers, humans who had carved out a meager existence amidst the ruins. They were wary of him at first, their eyes widening at the sight of a functioning robot. But when Eon explained his mission, his voice synthesizer cracking with emotion, they were moved by his unwavering loyalty. They offered him shelter for the night, sharing their meager rations and stories of the city before the fall.
An old woman, her face etched with the hardships she had endured, listened intently as Eon spoke of Mr. Lewis. When he finished, she placed a hand on his metallic arm, her touch surprisingly warm.
"There's a heart beating beneath that chrome shell," she said, her voice raspy but full of understanding. "Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." She gave him directions to the apothecary, her words a beacon of hope in the darkness.
Eon left the next morning, his internal batteries recharged, his resolve strengthened by the kindness of strangers. He carried with him their stories, their resilience, their belief in something more than the decay that surrounded them. He was no longer just a robot on a mission, he was a symbol of hope, a testament to the enduring power of loyalty and the bonds that connect us all, human and machine alike.